The moment my husband's ex walked through my front door, she greeted him with a kiss he didn't pull away from. My husband froze when he saw me watching, but I only smiled. That was the moment I knew Christmas dinner was about to become a battlefield. A truth sharp enough to slice through every lie he ever told me. Before we dive into this story, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from, your city, your country, wherever you are in the world. And please hit that like button for me right now and subscribe to my channel. We're building a community of people who refuse to be silenced, who know that dignity has no expiration date. Now back to my story. My name is Marlene. I'm 57 years old, and if you think that's too old to be talking about betrayal and revenge, you haven't been paying attention to life. Age doesn't make you immune to pain. It just makes you better at hiding it, better at planning, better at waiting for exactly the right moment to strike. Let me take you back to where this all started, 3 weeks before Christmas. A Tuesday morning that seemed completely ordinary until my husband opened his mouth and dropped a bomb into my coffee. I was standing at the kitchen counter, the early morning light filtering through the curtains I'd hung myself 20 years ago. Everything in that house I'd built with my own hands, my own choices, my own dreams. The Christmas tree was already up in the living room, decorated exactly how I liked it. White lights, red ribbons, and those delicate glass ornaments I'd been collecting since our kids were born. I'd spent the entire weekend making our home look like something out of a magazine, the way I did every year, because Christmas had always been my holiday, my sanctuary. Jeff walked in wearing that stupid golf shirt he'd bought on one of his business trips, poured himself coffee like it was just another morning, sat down at the table across from me and said, "Marlene, I've been meaning to tell you something. Vera will be joining us for Christmas dinner." Just like that. No preamble, no discussion, no asking, just a statement of fact, delivered with the same tone he'd use to tell me he was picking up milk on the way home. I felt my fingers tighten around my coffee mug, but I didn't let my face move, not one muscle. You learn things when you've been married for 32 years. You learn how to control your reactions. How to smile when you want to scream. How to nod when you want to flip the entire table. "Vera," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "Your ex-wife, Vera?" "Yeah," he said, not even looking at me. He was scrolling through his phone, already distracted. "I ran into her a few weeks ago, and we got to talking, and it's been 15 years since everything happened. Water under the bridge, right? I thought it would be nice to show there's no hard feelings. It's Christmas. Season of forgiveness and all that." Season of forgiveness. As if forgiveness was something you could just schedule between the turkey and the pumpkin pie. For those of you who don't know the history, let me paint you a picture. 15 years ago, Vera nearly destroyed my marriage. She and Jeff had an affair that lasted 8 months. 8 months of lies. Of late nights at the office. Of perfume on his collar that wasn't mine. Of a distance growing between us that I couldn't explain until I finally found the hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. The affair ended when I confronted him, and he swore it was over, swore he'd chosen me, swore he'd never speak to her again. We went to counseling. We rebuilt, or at least, I thought we did. Apparently, I was the only one actually building anything. I looked at Jeff that morning sitting at my kitchen table in my house, telling me that the woman who tried to steal my husband was coming to my Christmas dinner, and I said, "Of course, dear. The more the merrier." He looked up, surprised. "Really? You're okay with it?" I smiled. "Why wouldn't I be? It's been 15 years, like you said. Water under the bridge." He looked relieved, actually relieved, like he'd been expecting a fight and was thrilled to avoid it. He stood up, kissed me on the forehead, like I was his grandmother, and headed upstairs to get ready for work. "Another business trip," he said, "back in 3 days." The moment I heard his car pull out of the driveway, I walked to the sink and watched my knuckles turn white as I gripped the counter. Because here's what Jeff didn't know. Here's what he couldn't possibly know because he'd gotten so comfortable in his lies that he'd stopped being careful. I knew about Vera. I'd known for months. It started small. the way these things always do. Little changes that you notice but tell yourself you're imagining. Jeff started taking more business trips, 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a month. He said his company was expanding, said there were new clients to meet, deals to close, all the usual corporate nonsense that sounds plausible when you want to believe it. He'd come home tired, distracted, distant. We stopped having dinner together, stopped talking about anything real. He'd kiss me goodnight, but his mind was somewhere else, someone else. Our kids noticed too. Arthur, our son, works in tech about 2 hours away. He's 30 years old, sharp as a tack, and he sees everything. He called me one Sunday afternoon in October and said, "Mom, is Dad okay? He's been acting weird lately. Every time I call him, he sounds stressed. Is work getting to him?" I told Arthur what I'd been telling myself. "You know your father. He's always been a workaholic. I'm sure it's just a busy season." But I didn't believe it. Not really. Our daughter Mia called 2 weeks later. She's 28, works in marketing, and has her father's eyes, which made it harder when she looked at me with concern and said, "Mom, I'm worried about Dad. He barely talks anymore. He looks exhausted. Is he taking care of himself?" I reassured her too. "I'm keeping an eye on him, sweetheart. Don't worry." But I was worried. We were all worried, just not about the right things yet. Then came November, early November, on a night when Jeff said he was working late at the office. I was cleaning out his car, something I did occasionally because my husband was a slob, and I found a receipt tucked under the passenger seat. Dinner for 2 at an expensive Italian restaurant. Not in our city, in a city 3 hours away. The same city he'd been traveling to for work. The same city where, as I would soon discover, Vera had moved 2 years ago. That receipt was the first thread. I pulled it, and the whole sweater started unraveling. I did what any woman with a brain and an internet connection would do. I started digging, not dramatically, not frantically, but methodically, calmly. Because here's what I'd learned from the first time Jeff cheated. Panic gets you nowhere. Evidence gets you everything. I checked our phone bill online, hundreds of calls to the same number. Sometimes late at night, after I'd gone to bed. Sometimes during his lunch breaks. Sometimes early in the morning before I woke up. I called the number from a burner phone I bought at a drugstore. Vera answered. I hung up without saying a word. I checked our credit card statements. Hotels in her city, restaurants, gifts from jewelry stores I'd never received anything from, movie theaters, coffee shops, a whole life he was living without me, funded by our joint account, as if I was paying for my own betrayal. But I didn't confront him, not yet, because confronting him would have given him time to prepare, time to lie, time to make me look like the crazy, suspicious wife. I needed more. I needed something undeniable. Jeff had an iPad he rarely used, mostly for reading the news in the morning. What he didn't realize was that it was linked to his iPhone, and every text message that came to his phone showed up on that iPad. He kept it in his home office, plugged in, screen facing down. He thought it was safe. I started checking it every day, and that's when I saw everything. Text messages between Jeff and Vera going back over a year. Conversations about missing each other, about stolen weekends, about how hard it was to pretend when all they wanted was to be together. Photos she sent him. Photos I will never be able to unsee. Plans they were making, a future they were building. In one message from September, Vera wrote, "How much longer do we have to wait? When are you finally going to tell her?" Jeff responded, "Soon. I promise. I just need to figure out the right time. The kids would be devastated." The kids would be devastated. Not that I would be devastated. Not that destroying a 32-year marriage was devastating. The kids, as if that was the only thing holding him back from walking out the door. I took screenshots of everything, backed them up to a private cloud account he didn't know existed, documented every receipt, every call, every message. I built a case against my own husband like I was preparing for trial, because in a way, I was. And through it all, I smiled. I cooked his favorite meals. I asked about his day. I kissed him goodnight. I played the role of the devoted wife so well that he never suspected I knew. He thought I was blind. He thought I was trusting. He thought I was weak. He had no idea what was coming. Then came that Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before Christmas, when he invited Vera to dinner, and suddenly all the pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was about introducing her to the family, testing the waters, seeing if everyone could get along. This was Jeff's trial run for his new life, and he was using my holiday, my home, my dinner table to do it. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do. I called Arthur that afternoon. "Sweetheart, I need to ask you something. Has your father mentioned anything to you about Christmas dinner?" There was a pause. "Actually, yeah. He called me yesterday and said he was inviting an old friend. He was weird about it, didn't give me a name." "Why?" "It's his ex-wife, Vera," I said calmly. Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, what the hell? Why would he do that?" "I don't know," I lied, "but he seems to think it's important. I just wanted you to be prepared." Arthur was quiet for a moment, then said, "Mom, are you okay?" I smiled, even though he couldn't see me. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I promise. It's just dinner." But it wasn't just dinner. It was never just dinner. I called Mia next. Same conversation, same careful questions, same fake confusion. She was more direct than her brother. "Mom, this is insane. Why are you letting him do this?" "Because," I said softly, "sometimes you have to let people show you who they really are." Mia didn't understand. Not yet. But she would. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in performance. Jeff came and went on his business trips, each one undoubtedly ending in Vera's apartment, in her bed, in her arms. He'd come home with gifts for me, guilt gifts, I called them, and I'd accept them with grace. A scarf, a necklace, a bottle of expensive perfume, tokens of his remorse that meant nothing because the remorse itself was a lie. He'd ask me about the Christmas menu, and I'd tell him I was planning something special. He'd ask if I was okay with Vera coming, and I'd reassure him that I was fine, that it was lovely he wanted to mend old fences, that forgiveness was important. He believed every word. Meanwhile, I was planning, not just the menu, but the entire evening. Every detail mattered. The seating arrangement. I'd put Vera next to Jeff, of course, let them feel comfortable, let them think they were safe. The timing. I'd wait until dessert when everyone was relaxed, when their guards were down. The evidence. I'd print out just enough to make my point without overwhelming, but I'd have my phone ready with everything else, just in case. I even practiced my speech. Standing in my empty house while Jeff was on one of his trips, I stood in front of the mirror and rehearsed exactly what I would say, how I would say it, the tone I would use. Calm, factual, devastating. The week before Christmas, Arthur and Mia both came home. They'd taken time off work, excited to spend the holidays with family, completely unaware that the family they knew was about to implode. The first night they were home, we all had dinner together. Jeff was on one of his trips, so it was just the 3 of us. Mia made her famous pasta. Arthur opened a bottle of wine, and we sat around the table like we always had, laughing and talking and pretending everything was normal. But Arthur kept watching me. I could feel his eyes on me, studying me, trying to figure out what I wasn't saying. Finally, he put down his fork and said, "Mom, what's really going on with this Vera thing?" I took a sip of wine. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's weird. Dad inviting his ex to Christmas dinner. You being okay with it. Something doesn't add up." Mia nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing. This feels off." I looked at my children, these 2 beautiful humans I'd raised, and I wanted to tell them everything. I wanted to unload the weight I'd been carrying for months, but I couldn't, not yet. They needed to see it for themselves. They needed to understand without me poisoning the well. "Your father thinks it's important," I said carefully, "and I'm willing to trust his judgment on this. Maybe he's right. Maybe enough time has passed." Arthur didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. Mia frowned into her wine glass but said nothing. The next day, Jeff came home. He was in a good mood, whistling as he walked through the door, carrying shopping bags full of last-minute Christmas presents. He hugged the kids, asked about their jobs, made jokes over dinner. He was the father they remembered, the husband I'd once loved, and I watched him perform with a kind of detached fascination. How easy it was for him to lie, how natural. How comfortable he'd become in his deception. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Jeff and I were alone in our bedroom. He was getting ready for bed, and I was sitting at my vanity, taking off my earrings, watching him in the mirror. "I'm glad the kids are okay with Vera coming," he said casually. I met his eyes in the mirror. "Are they?" He paused, uncertain. "They seem fine." "They think it's strange," I said, my voice neutral, "but they're willing to go along with it because they trust you." He looked uncomfortable for a moment, then shrugged. "It'll be fine. You'll see. It'll actually be nice, having everyone together." Everyone together. As if Vera was part of our family, as if she belonged at our table. I turned around to face him. "Jeff, can I ask you something?" He looked wary. "Sure. Why is this so important to you? Inviting her, I mean. After everything that happened, why now?" For a second, just a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But then it was gone, replaced by that easy smile he'd perfected. "I just think it's time to let go of old grudges," he said. "Life's too short to hold on to anger." Life's too short. He actually said that. Life's too short, as if he hadn't spent the last year stealing mine. I smiled. "You're right. Life is too short." He looked relieved, kissed me on the forehead again, always the forehead, never the lips anymore, and climbed into bed. I stayed at my vanity for a long time after he fell asleep, looking at my reflection, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. When had I become this silent, patient, calculating version of myself? When had I learned to swallow my rage and smile through my pain? And then I realized he'd taught me. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment of taking me for granted had taught me exactly how to become what I needed to be to survive this. Christmas Eve arrived. The house was perfect. The tree was lit. The stockings were hung. The smell of cinnamon and pine filled every room. Arthur and Mia were in the living room watching old Christmas movies, their laughter drifting through the house. Jeff was in his office on the phone. With Vera, I was sure, making last-minute plans. I was in the kitchen, preparing everything for tomorrow's dinner. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, rolls, pies. I cooked like I was feeding an army, putting all my nervous energy into making everything perfect. Because it had to be perfect. This was my last Christmas in this house, as this version of myself, and I wanted it to be memorable. That night, after the kids went to bed, Jeff came into the kitchen where I was finishing up the prep work. "Need any help?" he asked. I almost laughed. He never helped in the kitchen. Not once in 32 years. "I'm fine," I said. "Everything's under control." He lingered in the doorway, watching me. "Marlene, I want you to know I appreciate you being so understanding about tomorrow, about Vera. I know it can't be easy." I stopped what I was doing and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved since I was 25 years old. This man I'd built a life with, raised children with, dreamed with. This man who was betraying me with a smile on his face. "You're right," I said quietly. "It's not easy, but I'm choosing to trust you, Jeff. I'm choosing to believe that you have our family's best interests at heart." Something in my tone made him uncomfortable. He shifted his weight, looked away. "I do," he said. "I always have." I turned back to my work. "Then I guess we'll see tomorrow, won't we?" He left the kitchen without another word. I stood there alone, my hands in the sink, and I felt something shift inside me. The fear I'd been carrying, the doubt, the pain, it was all still there. But underneath it was something else, something harder, something unbreakable. Strength. Pure, cold, focused strength. Tomorrow Vera would walk through my door. Tomorrow Jeff would think he'd gotten away with everything. Tomorrow my children would finally see the truth. And tomorrow, I would take back every single thing they'd tried to steal from me. I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in months. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. The kids were up early despite their age, excited about presents and food and family time. We opened gifts, drank coffee, laughed at Arthur's terrible jokes. It was almost perfect, almost normal, except for the ticking clock in my head, counting down the hours until Vera's arrival. Jeff was nervous. I could see it in the way he kept checking his phone, the way he couldn't sit still, the way he kept finding excuses to leave the room. He was probably texting her, making sure she was still coming, coaching her on how to act, what to say. At 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Arthur and Mia looked at each other, then at me. Jeff jumped up like he'd been electrocuted. "I'll get it," he said too quickly. I followed him to the door. I wanted to see this. I needed to see this. Jeff opened the door, and there she was. Vera. She looked good, I'll give her that. 55 years old, and she'd clearly spent a fortune on looking younger. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, a dress that was just a little too tight, a little too revealing for Christmas dinner. She was trying to prove she was still desirable, still worth leaving a wife for. She looked at Jeff, and her face lit up. "Merry Christmas," she said, her voice honey-sweet and absolutely sickening. And then she did it. She leaned in and kissed him, not on the cheek, not friendly, not appropriate. On the mouth, a real kiss, a kiss that said mine. Jeff froze. His eyes went wide. He pulled back. But not fast enough, not nearly fast enough, because I was standing right there, in the hallway, watching everything. Our eyes met. His face went pale. He opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. I smiled, calm, serene, deadly. "Vera," I said warmly, stepping forward, "welcome to our home. Please come in." Vera's smile faltered for just a second when she saw me. She hadn't expected me to be standing right there. She thought she could sneak that kiss in while I was in the kitchen, prove to Jeff that she could be bold, that she wasn't afraid of me. But I'd been waiting. I'd been watching, and I saw everything. Jeff's hand shook as he took Vera's coat. Arthur and Mia appeared in the hallway, their faces confused, uncomfortable. They'd seen the kiss, too. "Everyone," Jeff said, his voice too loud, too forced. "This is Vera. Vera, these are our kids, Arthur and Mia." Vera turned on the charm, shaking their hands, complimenting them, acting like she was just an old family friend and not the woman who'd tried to destroy their parents' marriage 15 years ago and was currently succeeding at destroying it now. Arthur's jaw was tight. Mia's smile was frozen. They were both looking at me, silently asking what the hell was happening. I just kept smiling. "Dinner will be ready in about an hour," I said. "Please, everyone, make yourselves comfortable in the living room. I'll bring out some appetizers." I turned and walked back to the kitchen, feeling all their eyes on my back. I could hear Jeff trying to make small talk, his voice strained. I could hear Vera laughing too loudly at something that wasn't funny. I could hear my children's silence, heavy and confused. In the kitchen, I braced my hands on the counter and took 3 deep breaths. This was it, the moment I'd been planning for, the moment everything would change. I pulled out my phone and looked at the folder labeled Evidence, screenshots, photos, receipts, call logs, everything I needed to end this in one devastating blow. Then I picked up the appetizer tray, fixed my smile back in place, and walked into the living room where my husband and his mistress were sitting on my couch like they had every right to be there. The games were about to begin, and I was the only one who knew the rules. I placed the appetizer tray on the coffee table with hands that didn't shake, even though every instinct in my body was screaming. Because here's what nobody tells you about revenge. The hardest part isn't the planning. It's the performance. It's looking at the 2 people who've been systematically destroying your life and offering them cheese and crackers with a smile that doesn't reach your eyes, but looks convincing enough that they think they're safe. Vera reached for a cracker, her fingers adorned with rings I knew Jeff had probably bought her, and said, "Marlene, your home is absolutely lovely. You've decorated so beautifully for Christmas." She was complimenting my home, the home I'd built, the home she wanted to take from me. "Thank you," I said, settling into the armchair across from where she and Jeff sat. Too close together, I noticed. Arthur and Mia flanked them on either side like bookends, their discomfort written all over their faces. I've always believed Christmas should feel warm and welcoming. A time for family to come together. I emphasized the word family just enough. Jeff shifted in his seat. Vera didn't catch it. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. She launched into a story about her own Christmas traditions, something about volunteering at a soup kitchen, painting herself as some kind of saint. I watched Jeff watching her, and I saw it. That look, the same look he used to give me 30 years ago. Admiration, affection, something that looked dangerously close to love. My daughter Mia caught my eye. She mouthed, "Are you okay?" I nodded, smiling, because I was okay. Better than okay. I was in complete control. Arthur cleared his throat. "So, Vera, Dad mentioned you two reconnected recently. How did that happen?" Good boy. He was testing, probing, trying to understand what I already knew. Vera glanced at Jeff before answering, and that glance told me everything. They'd rehearsed this. "Oh, just one of those coincidences. I ran into Jeff at a conference a while back. We got to talking, and it was like no time had passed at all. It felt good to clear the air after so many years. A conference. That's what they were calling it now. I'd seen the hotel receipts from that weekend. The room service charges for 2. The late checkout. Some conference. How wonderful, I said, my voice dripping with sweetness that could rot teeth. And you live nearby now. Another glance between them. About 3 hours away, Vera said. I moved there for work a couple years ago. 3 hours away. The exact distance Jeff had been traveling for all his business trips. Small world, I said, standing up. Well, I should check on dinner. Jeff. Darling, would you mind helping me in the kitchen for a moment? I saw panic flash across his face. He didn't want to be alone with me. He thought I might have questions about that kiss at the door, about why his ex-wife felt comfortable enough to kiss him like that in front of his wife. He should have been worried about so much more. Sure, he said, following me into the kitchen. The moment we were alone, he started talking, fast. Marlene, about earlier when she kissed me, that was completely inappropriate. I didn't know she was going to do that. I pulled away as soon as I could. I held up my hand, cutting him off. Jeff, it's fine, he blinked. It is? Old habits, right? I said, opening the oven to check the turkey. You two were married once. These things happen. I'm not insecure enough to be threatened by a greeting. I could see the relief wash over him. He actually believed I was that naive, that trusting, that blind. You're amazing, you know that, he said, coming up behind me, putting his hands on my shoulders. Most wives would be furious right now. I turned to face him, looking up at this man I'd shared 3 decades with. Well, I'm not most wives, am I? No, he said softly. You're not. And in that moment, I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to pull out my phone and show him every screenshot, every receipt, every piece of evidence I'd collected. I wanted to watch his face crumble when he realized I'd known all along, but that would have been impulsive, emotional. And this wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about strategy. Go back to our guests, I said, turning back to the oven. I'll be out in a minute. He left, and I stood there alone in my kitchen gripping the counter. How many times had I stood in this exact spot over the years, making breakfast, packing lunches, preparing dinners, baking birthday cakes, creating memories? This kitchen was the heart of my home, and I was about to use it as the staging ground for its destruction. I pulled my phone from my pocket and looked at the time. 3 hours until dessert. 3 hours until I would stand up and end this charade. 3 hours to let them all get comfortable, let their guards down, let them think they'd gotten away with it. The question was, could I make it 3 more hours without exploding? I returned to the living room with a fresh bottle of wine. Vera was in the middle of another story. This one about her job, something in marketing. Very impressive, very successful. She kept touching Jeff's arm as she talked, casual little touches that said, "mine." Arthur and Mia were watching this performance with increasing horror, and I could see them exchanging glances, trying to figure out what to do. "More wine, anyone?" I asked. "Already pouring." Vera held out her glass. "You're too kind, Marlene. I have to say I was nervous about coming today, but you've made me feel so welcome." She was nervous. The woman who'd been sleeping with my husband was nervous about meeting me. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. "Why would you be nervous?" I asked innocently. "We're all adults here. The past is the past." "Exactly," Jeff chimed in, a little too eagerly. "That's what I've been saying." Mia stood up abruptly. "Mom, can I help you with anything in the kitchen?" "Actually, yes," I said. "I could use some help setting the table." In the kitchen, Mia closed the door behind us and immediately whispered, "Mom, what the hell is happening? Did you see how she's touching Dad? Did you see that kiss? This is insane." I continued pulling plates from the cabinet, arranging them on the counter with careful precision. "I see everything, sweetheart. Trust me." "Then why are you letting this happen? Why aren't you saying anything?" I turned to face my daughter, this fierce, beautiful woman I'd raised to never accept disrespect. "Because sometimes, Mia, you have to let people show everyone exactly who they are. If I make a scene now, I'm the jealous wife. I'm the one causing drama. But if I wait, if I let them get comfortable enough to show their true colors," I trailed off, letting her imagination fill in the blanks. Her eyes widened. "Mom, do you know something we don't?" I handed her a stack of plates. "Let's just say this is going to be a very memorable Christmas dinner." Understanding dawned on her face, followed quickly by something that looked like pride. "You have a plan." "I have a plan," I confirmed. We set the table in silence, but I could feel Mia's energy shift. She wasn't confused anymore. She was on my team. And when Arthur joined us a few minutes later, pulling me aside while Mia went back to the living room, I knew he'd figured it out too. "Mom," Arthur said quietly, "I found something in the pocket of Dad's coat earlier. A hotel key card from a place in Vera's city, from 2 weeks ago." I met his eyes. "I know." "You know?" His voice cracked slightly. "How long have you known?" "Long enough," I said. "Long enough to be sure. Long enough to have proof." My son, my firstborn, looked at me with a mixture of devastation and rage. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because you both needed to see this for yourselves. You needed to see him invite her here. You needed to see them together. You needed to understand that this isn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. This is a choice he's been making for over a year." Arthur's jaw clenched. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done the first time," I said. "I'm going to make sure he can never lie his way out of this again." He nodded slowly. "When?" "Dessert," I said. "During dessert. Until then, we smile. We play along. We let them think they've won." "I don't know if I can sit through dinner watching them," Arthur said, his voice thick with emotion. I put my hand on his cheek, the way I used to when he was a little boy. "Yes, you can. Because you're my son, and you're stronger than you think. And because in a few hours you're going to watch your mother take back everything they tried to steal." He took a deep breath, nodded, and went back to the living room. I stood alone in the dining room, looking at the table I'd set, the good china, the crystal glasses, the candles, the centerpiece I'd spent hours creating, everything perfect, everything beautiful, everything about to be shattered. Have you ever had to sit through a meal knowing it would be your last? Knowing that by the time dessert was served, nothing would ever be the same again? Because that's where I was, standing in my dining room, about to call everyone to a table that would become ground zero. "Dinner's ready," I announced. Everyone filed into the dining room. I'd arranged the seating strategically. Jeff at the head of the table, me at the opposite end, Vera to Jeff's right, Arthur to his left, Mia next to me, everyone where I wanted them. Jeff carved the turkey, playing the patriarch, making jokes about his carving skills. Vera laughed at everything he said, touching his hand, his arm, his shoulder. She was marking her territory, And she thought I didn't notice. Or worse, she thought I didn't care. "This looks incredible, Marlene," Vera said, loading her plate. "You must have spent all day cooking." "I did," I said pleasantly. "I always go all out for Christmas. It's important to me that everything is perfect." "Well, you've certainly achieved that," she said. Then turning to Jeff, "You're a lucky man, Jeff. Not every ex-wife would be this gracious." I wasn't his ex-wife. I was his current wife. But the way she said it with that little emphasis, that subtle claim, she was already thinking of me in past tense. Jeff looked uncomfortable. "Marlene's always been amazing about stuff like this." "Stuff like what?" Arthur asked, his voice sharp. "Stuff like my father inviting his ex to family dinner?" The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Vera's smile faltered. Jeff shot Arthur a warning look. "Arthur!" "No, I'm genuinely curious," Arthur continued, and I could hear the barely controlled anger in his voice. "What exactly are we celebrating here? Forgiveness? Moving on? Or something else?" "Arthur," I said calmly, "let's not make our guest uncomfortable." "Our guest," he repeated, looking at Vera with undisguised hostility. "Right," Mia jumped in, trying to diffuse. "The turkey is really good, Mom. You outdid yourself." But the damage was done. The facade was cracking. Vera looked to Jeff for rescue, and he immediately started trying to smooth things over, talking about how mature adults can move past old grudges, how life was too short to hold on to resentment. He was good at this, I realized. Good at talking his way around uncomfortable truths. How many times had he used these same skills to lie to me? I watched them all, taking small bites of food I couldn't taste, sipping wine that might as well have been water, because I was somewhere beyond sensation now, beyond feeling. I was in that cold, clear space where everything becomes simple, where you see exactly what needs to be done, and you do it without hesitation. Vera started another story, this one about a Christmas she and Jeff had spent together during their marriage. She was doing it on purpose now, I realized, reminding everyone that she had history with him, that she'd been there first, that maybe she deserved to be there last. "Oh, I remember that Christmas," Jeff said, laughing. "We were so young and broke. We couldn't afford a real tree, so we decorated a houseplant." They shared a look, a moment, right there at my dinner table, in front of our children. They shared an intimate memory that deliberately excluded me. Mia's fork clattered onto her plate. "This is unbelievable," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Mia," Jeff said warningly. "What, Dad? Am I not supposed to notice that your ex-wife is basically flirting with you at Mom's Christmas dinner? Am I supposed to pretend this is normal?" "No one's flirting," Vera said, but her cheeks flushed. "We're just reminiscing." "About your marriage," Mia said flatly. "At your ex-husband's current wife's Christmas dinner. Super appropriate." "Mia, enough," Jeff said, his voice hard. But Mia wasn't done. "Does Mom get to reminisce too? Should we talk about all the Christmases she's spent making everything perfect for this family? All the years she's put into making this house a home? Or is this just about your past, Dad?" The silence that followed was deafening. Jeff's face was red. Vera looked like she wanted to disappear. Arthur was staring at his plate, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. And me? I just sat there, radiating calm. "Mia," I said quietly, "it's okay." "It's not okay, Mom. None of this is okay. I appreciate you defending me, sweetheart, but let's not ruin dinner. We can discuss this later." Later. That word hung in the air like a promise, like a threat. Jeff seized on the opportunity to change the subject, asking Arthur about his job. Arthur answered in monosyllables, clearly barely holding it together. The rest of the meal progressed in uncomfortable silence, broken only by Jeff's increasingly desperate attempts at small talk and Vera's diminishing contributions. She was starting to sense it, I think, starting to realize that this wasn't going the way she'd planned, that the family wasn't charmed by her presence, that maybe, just maybe, she'd miscalculated. But not enough, not yet, because as I stood to clear the plates, she stood too, all fake helpfulness. "Let me help you with those, Marlene." That's not necessary, I said. I insist, she pressed, already gathering dishes. So I let her follow me into the kitchen. I let her stand at my sink, in my kitchen, in my house, washing my dishes, and I watched her do it with a kind of detached curiosity, wondering what was going through her head. Did she see herself here permanently? Was she imagining replacing me? Did she really think this could end well for her? I know this must be awkward for you, Vera said suddenly, not looking at me. Having me here, I just want you to know that I appreciate how gracious you've been. I leaned against the counter, studying her. Why do you think I invited you, Vera? She looked up, surprised. Well, Jeff said. I know what Jeff said. But I'm asking what you think, she hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I think maybe you wanted to show that you're secure enough in your marriage to not feel threatened by his past. Secure enough, I repeated. Interesting choice of words. Something in my tone made her nervous. She set down the dish she was holding. Marlene, if there's something you want to say. Oh, there is, I said softly. But not yet. Not until we're all together. I wouldn't want anyone to miss it. Her eyes widened slightly. Miss what? I smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. Dessert. I picked up the tray I'd prepared, individual serving bowls of chocolate mousse, Jeff's favorite, and walked back to the dining room. Vera followed slowly, and I could feel her eyes on my back, feel her starting to understand that something was wrong. Everyone was still at the table when we returned. Arthur and Mia looked at me with expectation. Jeff looked uncomfortable, like he wanted this whole evening to be over. He had no idea how soon that wish would be granted. I set down the desserts, one in front of each person. Then I returned to my seat at the head of the table, phone in my pocket, evidence ready, heart beating steady and strong. Before we eat, I said, my voice clear and calm, I'd like to propose a toast. Jeff looked relieved, probably thinking I was about to make some speech about forgiveness and moving forward. Vera perked up, that fake smile returning. I stood, raising my wine glass. Everyone else followed suit, even Arthur and Mia, who knew what was coming but not exactly how it would unfold. I want to toast to truth, I said. To the truth that has been hiding in shadows for too long, to the truth that deserves to be brought into the light, to the truth that, no matter how painful, is always better than living in lies. Jeff's smile was frozen. Vera's hand trembled slightly as she held her glass. I've been thinking a lot about truth lately, I continued. About what happens when you trust someone completely, and they abuse that trust. About what happens when you choose to see the best in people, and they take that as permission to show you their worst. Marlene, Jeff started, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished, I said, and my voice had steel in it now. You see, I've learned something important over the past few months. I've learned that sometimes the person you think you know best is actually the person you don't know at all. The room was absolutely silent. Everyone was frozen, watching me. I've learned that business trips aren't always about business, I continued. That late-night phone calls aren't always about work, that gifts and gestures of affection can sometimes be motivated by guilt rather than love. Jeff's face had gone pale. Vera was no longer smiling. And I've learned, I said, looking directly at my husband, that when someone repeatedly lies to your face, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop pretending you believe them. Mom, Mia whispered, but whether it was encouragement or concern, I couldn't tell. I pulled out my phone and I saw Jeff's eyes go wide with recognition and panic, because he knew what I had. He suddenly knew exactly what I'd been doing all those months while he thought I was being the trusting, naive wife. So before we have our dessert, I said, before we finish this lovely Christmas dinner, I think it's time we all got honest with each other. Starting with you, Jeff. Would you like to tell everyone where you really were on all those business trips? Or should I? The fork slipped from Vera's hand and clattered onto her plate. Jeff opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Arthur leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Mia's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her jaw was set with determination. And me, I just stood there, phone in hand, evidence ready, watching my husband realize that the game was over, that he'd been checkmated by the woman he thought was too weak, too trusting, too devoted to ever fight back. "Cat got your tongue?" I asked sweetly. "That's okay. I have plenty to say, and I have receipts, literally." I tapped my phone screen, and the first image appeared, a text message between Jeff and Vera, time-stamped from 3 months ago. "I miss you," it read. "I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore." I showed it to everyone at the table. Mia gasped. Arthur's fists clenched. Vera looked like she might be sick. "That's just the first one," I said. "I have hundreds more. Hotel receipts, call logs, credit card statements, photos, an entire year's worth of evidence that my husband has been living a double life." Jeff finally found his voice. "Marlene, please, let's not do this here." "Where should we do it, Jeff?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "In private. Where you can gaslight me into thinking I'm crazy? Where you can convince me that what I saw with my own eyes isn't real? No. We're doing this here, now, in front of everyone, because they deserve to know the truth just as much as I did." I turned to Vera, who was shrinking in her chair. "And you knew he was married, you knew he had children, you knew he was lying to his family, but you didn't care, did you? Because you wanted what you wanted, and everyone else's pain was just collateral damage." Vera's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Jeff said you two were having problems. He said the marriage was basically over." "Did he?" I interrupted. "Is that what he told you? That our marriage was over? Because that's funny. Because just last month he renewed our vows at our anniversary dinner. He told me he'd never been happier. He told me he loved me more today than the day we married. Which version was the lie, Vera? The one he told you, or the one he told me?" Tears were streaming down her face now. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Yes, you did," I said coldly. "You knew. You just didn't care." I turned back to Jeff, who looked like he wanted to disappear. "You invited her here," I said, "to my home, on my holiday. You sat at my table and shared intimate memories with your mistress, while I served food I spent all day preparing. You kissed her at my door, and you thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I was so stupid, so blind, so devoted that I would just smile and take it." "I never thought you were stupid," Jeff said, his voice breaking. "Then what did you think?" I asked. "That I was weak? That I would forgive anything? That I had no self-respect?" He had no answer, because the truth was, yes, that's exactly what he'd thought. I looked around the table at each person. My children, who were learning a horrible lesson about trust and betrayal. My husband, who was finally facing the consequences of his actions. His mistress, who was realizing that fairy tales don't come true when they're built on someone else's ruins. "This marriage is over," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I've already contacted a lawyer. The divorce papers are being drawn up. You'll be served after the holidays." "Marlene." Jeff stood up, reaching for me. "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't touch me. Don't speak to me unless it's through lawyers. And Vera?" I turned to her one last time. "Congratulations. You finally got what you wanted. I hope it was worth it." And as I stood there in my dining room, watching my husband's face crumble and his mistress dissolve into tears, I realized that the hardest part wasn't over. It was just beginning. Vera was the first to move. She stood up so fast her chair nearly toppled over, grabbing her purse with shaking hands. "I need to leave," she stammered, not looking at anyone. "I need to... I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp. "Sorry you got caught? Or sorry you did it in the first place?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because we both knew the truth. She was sorry she got caught. She was sorry that her fantasy of running off into the sunset with my husband had just exploded in front of everyone. She was sorry she'd walked into a trap she never saw coming. "Let me make this very clear, Baon," I said, stepping toward her. "You are never to contact my husband again. You are never to come near my family again. And if you ever try to reach out, if you ever try to defend yourself or minimize what you've done, I will make sure everyone in your life knows exactly what kind of person you are. Do you understand me?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and practically ran for the door. I followed her, not because I wanted to see her leave, but because I wanted to make absolutely sure she did. Arthur came with me, positioning himself between me and the door like a bodyguard. At the entrance, Vera turned back one last time, looking past me to where Jeff was still sitting at the table, visible through the doorway. "Jeff," she called out, her voice breaking. "Jeff, please, say something." We all waited. The house was so quiet I could hear the Christmas tree lights humming in the living room. Jeff said nothing. Vera's face crumpled completely. She understood then, in that moment, what I'd known for months. Jeff wasn't brave, he wasn't strong, he wasn't the man either of us had thought he was. He was a coward who'd been caught, and cowards don't fight, they just hide. Arthur opened the door. "Leave," he said, his voice cold and final, "and don't ever come back." She left. The door closed behind her, and just like that, the woman who'd tried to destroy my family was gone. But the wreckage she left behind, that was still very much present. I walked back into the dining room. Jeff was still sitting there, head in his hands, shoulders shaking. Mia was crying silently, staring at her untouched dessert. Arthur stood behind me, solid and protective. "Kids," I said gently, "why don't you two go upstairs for a bit? Your father and I need to talk." Mia looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "Mom, are you sure?" "I'm sure, baby. I'll be fine, I promise." Arthur hesitated. "If you need us." "I'll call you," I assured him. "Go." They left reluctantly, Mia pausing to hug me so tightly I thought my ribs might crack. Then it was just me and Jeff, the man I'd spent 32 years loving, the man who'd thrown it all away. I sat down, not in my original seat, but in the one Vera had vacated, close enough to see his face clearly. "Look at me," I said. He lifted his head. His eyes were red, his face blotchy. He looked old suddenly, old and tired and broken. "How long were you planning to keep lying?" I asked, not angry anymore, just genuinely curious. He swallowed hard. "I don't know. Forever? Until I figured out what I wanted? I don't know, Marlene. I don't know." "Did you ever love me? Really love me?" "Yes," he said immediately. "God, yes, I still do." "Then how?" I asked, and now my voice did break, just a little. "How could you do this? How could you look at me every day, kiss me goodnight, tell me you loved me, and then go to her?" "I don't know," he whispered. "I don't have a good answer. It just happened, and then it kept happening, and the longer it went on, the harder it became to stop." "You could have stopped at any time," I said. "You could have been honest. You could have given me a choice. You would have left me." "Yes," I said simply. "I would have, and you would have deserved it. But at least I wouldn't have spent a year being made a fool of in my own marriage." He reached for my hand. I pulled away. "Don't," I said. "That part is over. You don't get to touch me anymore. You don't get to comfort yourself by pretending everything's okay." "What happens now?" he asked, his voice small. "Now?" I stood up, looking down at him. "Now you pack a bag and you leave. Tonight. You'll stay somewhere else. A hotel. A friend's place. I don't care. Tomorrow, you'll call the lawyer whose number I'm going to text you, and you'll cooperate fully with the divorce proceedings. You'll split everything fairly. You'll not fight me on any of it, and you'll sign whatever papers need signing." "Marlene, I'm not finished," I said. "You will also sit down with Arthur and Mia, and you will explain to them, honestly, what you've done and why. You will not make excuses. You will not blame anyone but yourself. You will give them the truth and the closure they deserve. And then, after that, after the divorce is final, and everyone has had time to process this nightmare you've created, maybe, we can figure out how to coexist as co-parents to our adult children, but that's all you get. That's all that's left." "I can change," he said desperately. "I can fix this. Just give me a chance." "You had 32 years of chances," I interrupted. You had 1,000 opportunities to be the man I thought you were. You chose not to take any of them. This isn't about punishment, Jeff. This is about self-respect, mine. And I will not spend one more day in a marriage where I'm not valued, respected, or loved the way I deserve to be. He was crying openly now, and part of me, a small, dying part, wanted to comfort him, wanted to say it would be okay. But the stronger part, the part that had been forged in the fire of the last few months, stayed firm. Go pack, I said. Now. He left the dining room, and I heard him climbing the stairs. I heard drawers opening and closing, heard him moving around our bedroom, my bedroom now, gathering his things, part of his life, leaving our shared space for the last time. Arthur and Mia came down the stairs as he was leaving. They stood in the hallway, watching him carry a suitcase and a duffel bag to the door. He stopped, looked at them, opened his mouth to speak. Don't, Arthur said flatly. Not tonight. Mom said you'll explain everything later. Until then, I don't want to hear your voice. Mia said nothing. She just looked at her father with an expression that was somehow worse than anger. Disappointment. Deep, profound disappointment. Jeff's shoulders sagged. He nodded once, opened the door, and left. The house felt different immediately, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted that I hadn't even realized was crushing me. Mia came to me first, wrapping her arms around me. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you had to go through this. I'm not, I said, surprising myself. I'm not sorry. I'm free. Arthur joined the hug, and we stood there in our hallway, the three of us, holding each other while the Christmas tree lights twinkled in the background and the remnants of our ruined dinner sat cold on the table. What do we do now? Mia asked. Now, I said, pulling back and wiping my eyes. We clean up this mess. We put away the food. We wash the dishes and we figure out how to move forward. On Christmas, Arthur asked. I smiled, a real smile this time, especially on Christmas, because tomorrow is a new day, and I, for one, am ready to start fresh. We cleaned together, the three of us, talking and processing and occasionally crying. We talked about their father, about the signs we'd all missed or ignored, about how we felt betrayed and angry and sad all at once. We talked about what the divorce would mean, about how holidays would work going forward, about all the practical realities of a family that had just been torn apart. But we also laughed. Arthur told a joke that was so bad we couldn't help but crack up. Mia found a bottle of expensive bourbon Jeff had been saving for a special occasion and declared that if this wasn't special, she didn't know what was. We toasted to new beginnings, to truth, to survival. By the time we finished, it was past midnight. Technically, Christmas was over, and I couldn't help but think that was fitting. The old life was over. The old Marlene was over. Tomorrow, something new would begin. The kids went to bed eventually, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. I stayed up, walking through my quiet house, looking at everything with new eyes. The photos on the walls, I take down the ones with Jeff, the furniture we'd bought together. Some of it would have to go. The memories embedded in every room, those would take longer to clear out. But I would do it. I would reclaim this space. I would rebuild this life, and I would do it on my own terms, without compromising, without settling, without accepting less than I deserved. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in the living room, looking at the Christmas tree, all those ornaments collected over decades, each one a memory. Some of those memories included Jeff, some of them didn't. I'd keep the ones that mattered and let go of the rest. My phone buzzed, a text from Jeff. I'm sorry for everything. I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I accept your apology, but you're right. I won't forgive you, not because I'm cruel, but because some things can't be forgiven. Some things just are. Good luck with your new life. I blocked his number, not out of anger, but out of necessity. I needed to move forward, and I couldn't do that with him still having access to me. 3 weeks later, I was in a lawyer's office. signing preliminary divorce documents. 6 weeks after that, I was looking at apartments, thinking about downsizing, starting over. The kids came with me, helping me envision a new space, a new life. Arthur had stopped speaking to his father entirely. Mia talked to him occasionally, but their relationship was strained, maybe permanently damaged. Jeff had tried to explain, had tried to apologize, but some betrayals are too deep to bridge with words. As for Vera, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved again, to a different city, trying to escape the shame. Jeff never followed her. Whatever fantasy they'd been living died the moment it was exposed to light. And me? I was healing. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely. I joined a book club, started taking painting classes, reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I rediscovered who Marlene was when she wasn't defined by being someone's wife. I won't lie and say it was easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, days I felt so angry I could barely breathe, moments when I questioned whether I'd done the right thing, whether I should have tried harder to save the marriage, whether I was throwing away 32 years for nothing. But then I'd remember that kiss at the door, the text messages, the lies, the fundamental disrespect of inviting his mistress to my home, and I'd know with absolute certainty that I'd made the right choice. Because here's what I learned through all of this. You can love someone and still choose yourself. You can honor what you built together and still acknowledge when it's time to tear it down. You can be devastated and empowered at the same time. You can be 57 years old and start completely over. 6 months after that Christmas dinner, the divorce was finalized. I signed the papers in my new apartment, surrounded by my kids, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: relief. The question I asked at the beginning, what happens when you finally stand up for yourself, had been answered. What happens is you get your life back, not the life you had before, but something better, something authentic, something that's entirely yours. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that revenge is always the answer, that exposing someone publicly is always right, that blowing up your life is always worth it. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone's pain is their own. But I will tell you this: you deserve to be valued. You deserve to be respected. You deserve to be with someone who would never dream of betraying you, let alone do it for over a year while looking you in the eye and lying. And if you're in a situation where you're being made to feel crazy for noticing the truth, where you're being gaslit and manipulated and told you're overreacting, trust yourself. Document everything. Gather your evidence. Build your case. And when you're ready, when you have everything you need to prove you're not imagining things, then you stand up and you take back your power. That Christmas dinner wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about refusing to be a silent victim in my own story, about showing my children that sometimes love means letting go, even when it hurts. Was it the most dramatic way to end a marriage? Absolutely. Could I have done it differently? Probably. Do I regret it? Not for a single second. Because that night, in front of everyone who mattered, I stopped being the woman who accepted crumbs and started being the woman who demanded the whole damn cake. And that woman? She's pretty incredible. So here's my question for you, the one I want you to really think about. If you knew the truth would set you free, but it would also destroy everything you've built, would you still choose the truth? Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let everything burn so something better can grow from the ashes. I chose the truth. I chose myself. And I've never looked back. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? What did you choose? And do you regret it? Drop your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something, if it reminded you that you're stronger than you think, hit that subscribe button. Because every day, I share stories of people who refused to be victims, who took back their power, who chose themselves when the world told them to settle. You're not alone in this. None of us are. And together we're building a community of people who refuse to accept anything less than they deserve. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, you are worthy of respect. You are worthy of truth. You are worthy of love that doesn't make you question your sanity. Never forget that. Thanks for listening to my story.